everyone, my name is Junon. I have a health science background and I'm the author of the book Truth and Empathy, How to Find Your Soulmate. And I'll put a link to the book below. This video is about the differences between ESFPs and ENFPs. Many people are confused between these two because when we look at their function stack, they're essentially the same, but the intuitive function has been substituted for the sensor function. So one is the sensor version of the other. So for most people, unless they dive deeper, they might be confused about these two. One of the main differences between sensor perceivers and intuitive feelers is that sensor perceivers tend to have a short attention span. So when we give information to that group is that you want to keep it to the basics. So they want enough information to know what to do, the next step. So they're about the present moment. Whereas when we look at the intuitive feelers, they are about the abstract, like future. And these are people who like to take their time. They're not fast. So if you actually look at how fast both work, you'll see that intuitive feelers tend to be slower. They don't have fast reaction times, whereas sensor perceivers, they tend to be the type of people who like to do things fast. So they are about speed. The other point when you look at these two is that the theme of their lives, sensor perceivers are about movement and freedom. So that's why they usually will gravitate towards professions that give them that. So they're going to be entertainers, entrepreneurs, and they tend to be able to generate a lot of money and they tend to do very well. So they have that freedom of movement. Whereas the intuitive feelers at the ENFPs is that they're not so much about entrepreneurship. So you won't see, they don't usually go into business. They are more interested in spirituality and meaning. So they could make money, but usually it's not their ultimate goal. They want to go deeper. So these are people who are more interested in the subtle aspect of life and they're more reflective. So when you'll see is that even in terms of the percentage of people who are ENFPs versus ESFPs, so you'll see a lot more sensor perceivers than intuitive feelers. So you'll see just a small percentage that are even in the public eye. But when an intuitive feeler is well known, they actually are even better known than most sensor perceivers. So they're more like, for instance, Michael Jackson. I type him as an ENFP. They are considered legends. You can have little icons that are sensor perceivers, but they usually do not fall into that category. Now, the other aspect when it comes to sensor perceivers is that they have, in terms of their physiology, their brainwave dominance is beta. So you'll see that in terms of the cycle is around 14 cycles per second, and that is reflected in their resting breathing, which will be about 14 breaths per minute. Whereas when we look at the ENFP, they have a slower resting breathing. So their optimal one is around 10 breaths per minute, and that is reflected in terms of their brainwave. So they have a alpha brain dominance. So they are naturally in a light meditative state, and that's why they're more interested in the abstract aspect of life. And because they are feelers, it has to do with more spirituality and meaning. The other point also, when it comes to their love life, you'll see that sensor perceivers tend to have more romantic partners. So because they have a short attention span, they can get bored easily. So they're probably going to have a number of partners compared to the intuitive feeler like the ENFP. So in other words, they are the type to want variety. They want something that is different. So they will probably need a change in their partners over time. So they're more likely to have divorces and not be able to stick with it for a long period of time. Whereas the ENFP is more likely to have a partner and stay with him or her for a long period of time. So in terms of the topic, let's say if they make music or art, because most both of them can do so, is that you'll see that with the ENFP, they will probably go for something that is probably more deeper. They're not going to be focusing, let's say, on only, let's say, romantic relationships. They're probably going to try to incorporate more of that spiritual aspect compared to the art that an ESFP would do. So let's say if we compare again, someone like Michael Jackson to, let's say, a number of artists nowadays, either Harry Styles, Adele, let's say Taylor Swift, you see already in terms of the topics that they're interested in will be different, even in terms of how their face is develops. In other words, if let's say you meet an ESFP, they most likely won't have a well-developed jaw compared to the ENFP. And the difference is that it has to do with their resting breathing rate. It's kind of interesting because most people say, well, how can you know just by looking at someone? Is that most ESFPs most likely don't have 32 straight teeth because their true resting rate is 14 breaths per minute, their corrected one, but most of them hyperventilate and they usually tend to hyperventilate through the mouth. They're less likely to have the right position of their tongue. So what you'll see is that most SPs don't have space for 32 straight teeth. They might have straight teeth because they removed them, so they remove their wisdom teeth, but they don't have space for all of them. Whereas with an ENFP, if let's say they are even stressed on a chronic basis, they probably will not breathe more than 16 times a minute, so they're more likely to have space in their mouths for 32 straight teeth. The other major point of difference between sensor perceivers and intuitive feelers is that an ENFP will be a universal healer, so they will have a healing effect on the three other main personality types, whether it's sensor judgers, sensor perceivers, or intuitive thinkers. Whereas an ESFP will not have that. They will have a healing effect on, let's say, the sensor judgers and some of the sensor perceivers, but not the intuitive group, whether it's an intuitive thinker or intuitive feeler. And the how do you know that is that, for example, I will put in the description a recording of a subtle energy. So when let's say I do a typing, I can actually feel the energy of that person, and if let's say someone is sensitive to subtle energy, you will sense a difference between the energy that an intuitive feeler gives off versus a sensor perceiver. An intuitive feeler gives off a very loving energy, and I actually in the MBTI personality perception of Michael Jackson, I've explained that. So if we actually look deeper into the difference between ESFPs and ENFP, we realize that they are not the same in terms of the theme of their lives, their attention span, the way they approach their romantic relationships, their careers, in terms of the energy they give off, the way their jaws are developed. So in other words, it's easier to determine the differences if we actually pay attention to those aspects. So I trust that this information was interesting. Maybe you learned something. If you did, please click on the like button, subscribe to my channel, and we will talk soon.